Welcome to the Currently Reading Podcast. We are bookish best friends who spend time every week talking about the books that we've read recently. And as you already know, we don't shy away from having strong opinions, so get ready.
We're light on the chit-chat, heavy on the book talk, and our conversations will always be spoiler-free. Today we'll discuss our current reads, a readerly deep dive, and a little something bookish before we go.
I'm Kaytee Cobb, a homeschooling mom of 4 living in Arizona, and books make even the hard days better.
And I'm Kelly Holmes, a freelance writer and a homeschooling mom of 4 living in Austin, Texas. And I believe doctors and therapists should write prescriptions for rereading. This is episode number 4 of season 9, and we're so glad you're here.
We are so glad you're here. And y'all, I bet you have noticed that we have a new voice joining me today. Kelly, thank you for being here, and welcome to Currently Reading.
Yeah, I'm definitely having a fangirl moment here. I've been listening to y'all for a long time, so I'm excited to sit down and chat books.
Kelly is bringing us a super special deep dive today. I'll give you a little hint here at the top of the show that today we are what I'm calling breaking open the dam on new releases, and we'll get to know Kelly a little more. All right, Kelly, but as you know, we always get started around here with the same delightful energy, and we're going to get started with our bookish moments of the week. What is yours?
So I have never really been a rereader, but my oldest is leaving for college soon. By the time you're listening to this, my husband and I, plus our 3 younger kids, we're going to be just days away from dropping her off at college, 1,900 miles away. And I'm not okay. It's impacting my reading life. I have DNF'd 12 of the last 14 fiction books I've started, 2 of them after the 50% mark, which is so painful to do, but I just couldn't force myself to keep going. So I have really been leaning into rereads of favorites. And so for the 3rd time in less than a year, I am getting swept up into the delightful shenanigans of Emma M. Lyon. I listen to Emma M. Lyon every morning on a walk through my neighborhood. I have this near constant smile on my face. I probably look like a Disney princess who's listening to the woodland animals serenading me. The same neighbors pass me every morning, and they've passed me on non-Emma M. Lyon mornings, and so they must wonder what in the world I'm so happy about. Little do they know the audiobook that I'm listening to is literally holding me together right now, which is why I am now a firm believer that when you are going through a hard time, you really should try rereading a favorite book, especially if you just can't seem to get into anything else.
I love that. And because of the way that our recording schedule works, you haven't heard next Monday's episode yet, which is the episode before this one. But Roxana is living her same life, doing the same thing, listening to Emma M. Lyon on repeat. So you are in good company, my friend.
Awesome. Well, honestly, there's another bookish friend. She has triplets who are going to college here shortly, and she is also listening to Emma M. Lyon.
Yes, that is actually my good friend Erin, who also lives in Texas. So y'all are in good company there as well. I love Erin and I love Emma M. Lyon, as do the rest of us. But I'm ready to pivot to my bookish moment, which I hinted at. Books make even the hard days better. Basically the exact same thing you're talking about here, Kelly. But my bookish moment has to do with birthday week in our house. We have 2 birthdays in 2 days. My middle boys turned 10 and 13 on Tuesday and Wednesday of this past week. And that also means multiple child checks in a week because I take them annually like you're supposed to. Sometimes that means vaccines, of course, and nobody likes a poke. But the best part about our doctor's office, it is directly next door to a Barnes & Noble. Makes it so easy to deal with the poking and the prodding and the measuring and the testing and get to the end of appointment for a cafe reward and a little book browse. Everybody loves that. That's part of the routine. We can go to the doctor's office. It's like solo time with mom, but then the best part is the solo time at the bookstore afterwards. Double bonus. It's actually fun to go to the doctor's office.
I love that because what happens when I take my kids to the doctor is they bring out the bin of cheap plastic stuff from the dollar store. And then my house has all of these rubber duckies accumulated over 4 kids for years and years and years that clutter the floor. And The book option, I am a big fan of that. That would be a great tradition to get into with your kids.
Is a great tradition. And this is not bookish, but I will say that starting from long, long ago, I made a household rule that things like dollar store treats or Happy Meal toys or birthday party goodie bag tchotchkes, they have a 24-hour shelf life in my house. So I'm like, you know what? I hope you love that and I hope you play with it constantly. But tomorrow when I see it, it is going to go in the trash and we're just going to be all done with it. Because otherwise a dog's going to eat it or I'm going to find it later or somebody's going to get mad that it got broken. And I just, no, we're all done with that.
That is so smart. Man, you're like halfway through your parenting journey and you hear about this pure gold. And I wish I'd had that at the beginning. That's fantastic.
We all have to lean on each other and learn from each other. This is what happens. All right, let's get into our current reads, though, Kelly. Did you have a hard time choosing what you were going to bring to the show today?
Yes, by virtue of the fact that I've DNF'd 12 of the last 14 fiction books that I have started. But I went back. I really wanted to bring some books that we haven't heard on the show yet. So I let that guide me and picked some of my favorite recent reads before my mental health turned to M Lion.
Perfect. I can't wait to hear about them. What is your first one?
So first up is Ribbonwood by Ruby Landers. Here's the setup. Ribbonwood is the name of a small town in Australia. And I do mean small. I think the population is 900. And its most infamous resident is Laura Bennett. She's a single mom and a business owner that everyone loves to hate. Anytime a scandal crops up in this little town, Laura is sure to blame, according to everyone. And then we have Ollie Gabrielli. She left Ribbonwood right after high school. She went on to become this hotshot doctor. She's really good at her job. And she is now dealing with burnout from the trauma that she sees as a doctor. So she has come back home to Ribbonwood for 3 months to stay with her family and recover. But back in ye olden days, Ollie and Laura were arch nemesis. Nemesi? What's the plural of it? Is it nemesis?
Nemesis.
Okay. Back in high school. So when they cross paths now, decades later, as adults, that old hatred they had for each other, it is just simmering under the surface. And it sparks to life every time they speak. And now there's something new in the mix. Ollie can't take her eyes off Laura. So, as you might guess, this is an enemies to lover romance, and it is a sapphic romance. What I loved about it is that it flips the script on misogyny, and in particular, the flavor that you get in small town gossip. That enemies to lovers tension, it really comes out in the best way every time Ollie and Laura talk, because their banter is just sharp and snarky, but also playful. It's not mean-spirited. You can tell that they still care about each other underneath it all. And you probably should know that this is open door. The spice is spicy. I gave it 4 chili peppers in my currently reading spreadsheet, which kind of surprised me looking back at it. So I went back to look at romance.io and they had 4 out of 5 on the spice scale as well. So I guess I did remember correctly that it was pretty spicy. But one of my favorite parts of this book was really unexpected for me. When I pick up a romance, it's because I'm in the mood for a romance. I just want to get a love story. But I really loved the way that all the women in this community show up for each other. I am not a big crier when reading, but there is a scene with an overwhelmed mom that really touched me in a deep way. It made me tear up, and it made me deeply grateful for the times that the women in my life have shown up for me when I was having a hard time. So I gave this 5 stars. It is emotional and funny, but hopeful. And it was published in 2024, so you should be able to get it. I think it's even on Kindle Unlimited. So that was a big hit for me, and I haven't really seen many people talk about it. I feel like it's an under the radar gem that not many people have picked up.
Excellent. I have actually not heard of Ruby Landers before, but I like leaving the continent, the North American continent, for my romance. So I'm definitely interested in popping over to Australia for a little visit here. And our listeners definitely know, well established, that I'm a big fan of sapphic romance in general. This title, I thought you were going to give either historical fiction or women's fiction. So yes, when you said 4 chili peppers, I was like, Are we sure about that?
Yeah, I didn't read this for the longest time because when you read the publisher blurb, it's kind of a weird romance setup, the way that it starts with the Laura character and talks about how everybody loves to hate her, basically. It was just really fresh and different for me, not just like a typical romance, and dealing with some really grown-up things. You know, Laura is a single mom and a business owner, and I have in the past been a single mom, and I have been a business owner, and so it went a little deeper than just the will they, won't they kind of stuff. So I really appreciated it. So this was Ribbonwood by Ruby Landers.
Awesome. Great job on your very first book setup. I'm impressed, Kelly. All right, my first one this week is a little older release, also from 2024. This is When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. Here's the setup. Dizzy Fall, a precocious 12-year-old, can see ghosts. That's all well and good, though, because that's just part of this story. She has two brothers, the Fall brothers, Perfect Miles, the 17-year-old who can do no wrong, is always meeting or exceeding expectations in everything he does, and the daredevil, Winton, who is 19 and could be a world-famous violinist if he wasn't always mucking things up. When Dizzy is almost hit by a car one day right at the beginning of the story while crossing the street, an angel shows up to save her and pull her from danger. It might just be an ordinary girl, but she quickly becomes tangled up in the lives of all three Fall siblings. This book blends magical realism and family drama and road trips across the country. It pulls together stories of generations past and the ghosts that follow Dizzy Fall around. It's a little bit of an epic tale. It feels a little bit Odyssey-like, but that's probably just because I have the Odyssey on the brain. It takes time for the reader to sink into this story and get your feet under you. Interspersed with our current timeline of Dizzy and her siblings and this angel/girl, who is she, trying to figure out what's going on with their lives, we also have letters written from the mom of all three kids to each of them and their absent father. In addition, we have a nearly fairy tale storyline of lost love and a journey across the sea and a winery created in the California wine region. We have Sandro, the dog, who is the perfect dog. Oh, Sandro. He gets to guide us on our travels through this past and present journey. Not everything about magical realism is sweet and easy, though. There is trauma in this story in some of these characters' pasts and presents. There's a substantial amount of time spent in hospitals and waiting rooms. We have abandonment and abuse, suicidal ideation, homophobia, and just plain old heartbreak. Our characters are beautiful but flawed, and this family is broken but loving, and I loved that about this book. It is complex and nuanced and multifaceted in a really wonderful way, even though it did feel a little bit like I'm all over the place here. I've got this old fairy tale, I've got this current thing, I've got a dog that can talk into somebody's head. What's going on there? However, I was happy to pick it up. I really enjoyed I'll Give You the Sun, which is Jandy Nelson's previous release. It came out in 2014. And then after that, I read her debut release, which is called The Sky is Everywhere, which did not hit for me as well. But this newest one from 2024 was a winner. I really loved how she wove the narrative. It was not just a flat timeline from beginning to end. I loved the family and found family at the center of this story, and the way that it was almost a multimedia narrative with the letters and the fairy tale braided into that tapestry. I gave this one 4.5 stars and only took off that little bit because sometimes it felt a little bit scattered to me, like the tapestry was too confusing to look at as a whole. But it was truly excellent and is currently sitting at a 4.3 star rating on Storygraph as well, so I'm not the only one who feels this way. This was delightful, and even though I've got a 12-year-old, 17-year-old, 19-year-old at the center of my setup here, I would probably call this an adult novel, maybe YA. It just ranges all over the place. There's a lot of complex themes here, and the writing itself is pretty complex, but I would hand it to a teenager if they were interested in reading it. It is a chonker, though, over 500 pages. This is When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson.
Oh, man, that's got some catnip for me. The found family, the road trip, the talking dog.
Sandro.
Would you say it's like a huggable book, like when you finished it?
Oh, yes. By the time I finished it, I definitely wanted to give it a hug. It was very sweet and well
Okay.
done. I have it in paper, and this is one that I not tandem read, but multi-formatted. So I would switch back and forth depending on where I was. The audio was excellent, the chunks that I listened to of the audio, but I did also like having the physical book in my house so I could hold on to it when I was done. All right, Kelly, let's move on to book two. What do you got?
All right, book two, I'm keeping tradition here. This is where I'm slotting my nonfiction pick. And this one is called Art Cure, The Science of How the Arts Save Lives by Daisy Fancourt. And this is a fantastic nonfiction book about the impact that engaging in the arts has on our mental and even our physical health. And here I'm defining the arts broadly, as the author does in the book. This includes visual arts, reading, writing, dance, music, theater, even crafting, which I am personally interpreting to include book bedazzling, which means book bedazzling is good for your health. But a lot of us think of the arts as a luxury or as purely something we do for leisure. But from the evidence of decades of studies, this book proves that engaging in the arts isn't just a luxury. It's as essential to our health as physical exercise and a healthy diet. And if you're sitting there, as I say that, and you're rolling your eyes a little bit at such a bold statement, I honestly get it, because when I first read the blurb of this book, I was skeptical too. And I actually convinced my husband to read the book before me to make sure that it was solid and that I wouldn't waste my limited reading time on a dud, which I like to do this a lot when there's a book that I'm on the fence whether I want to read it. Then he pressed it into my hands, which he doesn't really gush about books very much. And so the fact that he said, no, you really need to read this. I wanted to share this quote from the publisher blurb to give you an idea of what you'll find inside. Music supports the architectural development of children's brains. Artistic hobbies help our brains to stay resilient against dementia. Dance and magic tricks build new neural pathways for people with brain injuries. Arts and music act just like drugs to decrease depression, stress, and pain, reducing our dependence on medication. Going to live music events, museums, exhibitions, and the theater decreases our risk of future loneliness and frailty. Engaging in the arts improves the functioning of every major organ system in the body, even helping us to live longer. This book completely shifted my perspective on what it means to experience art. I've been to museums before. I like to say that museums are fun, but honestly, like when I go to a museum, I've been to the Louvre, and I go and stand in front of this really famous piece of art, and I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's nice. What's next? Like, you look at the year it was painted, and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to get from this. It actually set me on this mini deep dive on how to cultivate moments of wonder using the arts. And as just one example of how this has shifted my life, I homeschool my kids. And because of this book, I am now planning to devote a whole day every week of this next school year to engaging in the arts with my kids and help them establish that habit now at a young age. We're going to call it Art Fridays. I particularly appreciated that each chapter ends with a list of practical takeaways for how you can have more fun engaging in the arts on a more regular basis, because this is stepping through a lot of studies. Like, it's 320 pages, but a huge chunk of that is all the study citations in the back of the book. We're halfway through the book. I know you're doing a good job, Mama. Like, you're doing your research. So I gave it 4 stars, but only because of that aspect of it, that sometimes I'm like, okay, I trust you now. Like, just tell me what the takeaway is. I've already tested out some of the things with my kids, and we looked at a piece of art together and I teared up. And it's because of the path this book set me on that I really connected with a piece of art in a way that I never have in my entire life. What I loved about this is proof that reading is good for your health, not just your mental health, which I think we have all experienced, but your physical health too. So this came out in January 2026, and it is, like I said, 320 pages, but don't let that turn you away, because I'd say, I didn't count, but at least 50 pages of that is just study citations. So this is Art Cure by Daisy Fancourt.
Super interesting, because I wasn't sure when you first started talking about it if we had to, as humans who are interested in art improving our mental health create art, or if consuming is enough to make sure that you're getting these mental health benefits and protections against dementia and later in life activities. It feels like those are two very separate things, right? But I like the idea that both pieces of that puzzle, being able to be creative and flex those creative muscles, matter just as much as being able to consume well and let yourself be in the moment with art. Because I agree, it can be really difficult to, we've talked many times about the attention economy right now and the ways that people are being drawn away from things that take deep thought and deep reflection, like reading. And then to add into that it's just as easy to be drawn away from a piece of art at the Louvre, maybe that you waited in line for hours to see, because what's the next thing, right? What's next on our list for today?
Check. Mona Lisa.
Exactly.
Now
Mona Lisa.
what?
I'm over it. What's in the next room? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I'm tired, I'm bored, let's move on. So how do we take in the art of the world and let it impact us in a society where it feels like nothing impacts us anymore to that degree?
Right.
I'm glad you brought that, Kelly. And I also have nonfiction for my second book. My second book this week is American Wolf by Nate Blakeslee. This was an indie press list book recommended by Two Friends Bookshop in Bentonville, Arkansas. On the indie press list as a whole, we usually only end up with something between 2 and 5 nonfiction picks per year. They're pretty thin on the ground, and therefore we are pretty picky about what shows up on that list because they just don't sell as well. But when we get approached about a really great animal-centered nonfiction book that reads like true crime, it was an easy yes here. American Wolf is this compulsively readable narrative nonfiction book about the wolves of Yellowstone National Park, and especially 06, the female alpha wolf at the center of this story. In American history, and actually throughout the world, wolves had been hunted to near extinction before conservation science caught up to the idea of keystone predators. They thought, well, humans want to hunt deer, so we can't have wolves around because then there's less for the humans to hunt and consume, right? And they allowed mass killings of this really powerful animal, and it ended up really throwing off the balance of the ecosystem. They were only reintroduced to Yellowstone in around the mid-90s after being classified as endangered and threatened throughout the United States. 06, our iconic alpha, is described as uncommonly powerful, with gray fur and faint black ovals around each of her eyes. She is a kind and merciful leader, a fiercely intelligent fighter, and a doting mother. May we all be described this way on our deathbeds. She is beloved by wolf watchers, particularly the man that is kind of at the center of our story, the naturalist Rick McIntyre, and becomes something of a social media star with followers around the world. But as she raises her pups and protects her pack, 06 is challenged on all fronts, by hunters who compete with wolves for the elk they both prize, by cattle ranchers who are losing livestock and have the ear of politicians, and by other Yellowstone wolves who are vying for control of the park's stunningly beautiful Lamar Valley. So that little chunk describing 06 is from the publisher blurb, but I thought it did such a good job showing the many layers of this story. It reads like a story of rival mob bosses. It reads like my favorite kind of narrative nonfiction about animals with an exemplar, an icon at the center of the story, and their various human and animal players to flesh it out. It reads like a call to action and to justice for those powerful and gorgeous creatures. And I couldn't put it down. I often read animal-centered nonfiction, and I love learning about it, and I love being in it, but it's not suck me in style writing. This was that. This is a milkshake book. This is one that I would hand to any dude that I had to shop to for sure, but also any human that loves living in this natural, gorgeous world that we have and wants to protect it. I'm so glad that Two Friends pushed to include it on the list, even though it was nonfiction, because I absolutely loved it. This is American Wolf by Nate Blakeslee.
Oh man, that's so good. I think my husband might have already read that one too, because I think he read a book about he did. He gave it 5 stars. Yeah, that one. I was like, this is sounding so familiar. It's sounding like I've already listened to somebody recount this book to me. He gushed about it. And again, he's not a big gusher.
Great. Okay, Kelly, let's hear about your third book this week.
Okay, last one I have for you is The Rewind Files by Claire Willett. And here's the setup. The year is 2112, and we are in Washington, D.C., with Regina Bellows, who works as a junior agent at the U.S. Time Travel Bureau. So yes, time travel is a thing in this world, but unfortunately the butterfly effect is also a thing, and the actions of time travelers have led to these dangerous anomalies in the future. So Regina's agency that she works for is responsible for fixing those messes before they can have dire consequences. And from behind her desk in DC, that is exactly what she does every day. She is the support staff for a field agent. And then one day, she uncovers evidence of a huge anomaly in the year 1972. And if someone doesn't travel back in time to fix it, the anomaly will lead to World War III in Regina's world. And she is the only one who can do this particular job, but she is very much not a field agent. On top of her not having the polished people skills or the training that a field agent should have, she'll have to go undercover in Nixon's White House without anyone finding out who she really is. This book was pure fun. If you like fast-paced sci-fi adventures with a dash of mystery and smart characters who will make you laugh, this is for you. But you will also get a history lesson on the side about the Watergate scandal, which honestly, I didn't know much about that going into this. But don't worry, this is nothing like your high school history class. This is just a fun romp, and the history is a bonus cherry on top. I consider this a super under the radar gem because it came out in 2015, but it has fewer than 700 ratings on Goodreads and fewer than 200 on Storygraph. And I don't get it. I just want to scream from the rooftops about this book. I had so much fun with it. I will admit, I do like a good time travel book, but sometimes they make my head hurt. Trying to figure out the logic. Okay, wait a second. If this happens in this timeline, well, then how does this impact this? And anyway, I can get kind of tripped up on that, keeping track of different timelines. The time travel in this book did work for me, but I will say that I didn't go into it actively looking for hiccups in the time travel aspect of it. I just strapped into my seat and I enjoyed the ride. I believe that's the best way to experience this book. It kind of feels like if you put Alias and Quantum Leap and mix them up in a blender and set it in Watergate times, here you go. This is your book. So it's adventurous, mysterious, and funny. It is a chonker, but I gobbled it up fast. It's 504 pages. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited as well, if that's a thing that you make use of for your reading life. So that was The Rewind Files by Claire Willett.
While you were talking, I tried to get this book like 6 different ways. I cannot believe less than 700 ratings, 4.43 on Goodreads.
I know.
From 2015. What is happening here? I cannot find an audio version of it anywhere, unfortunately for me. And I looked at like my library for a regular hard copy. They don't have it either. So I'm going to have to look a little further afield. But time travel is catnip for me. I love the idea of like historical fiction based around Watergate. I know some people have some feelings about whether or not the 70s are allowed to be historical fiction. They really have feelings about whether 2001 is supposed to be historical fiction or not. And I like this like spunky lack of filter heroine because I sometimes get into trouble in the same way.
Yeah, same.
Good job. I'm impressed. All right. My third book this week was on the show, but it's been almost a year, so I felt good about bringing it back. I'm going to talk about Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. Mary brought this one to the show in season 8. I feel like it's time for a revisit. Wild Reverence is kind of a spin-off from the Divine Rivals duology that Mary and I both loved. In this book, we are outside of that story, though. We've entered the world of the gods that make up the mythology of Divine Rivals. It feels a little like Greek mythology, but absolutely stands on its own. This is not Zeus and Apollo. It's Matilde, the young goddess Matilda. She's a messenger who knows everyone's secrets, because when you are carrying around the messages, sometimes you get to read them. She is pulled toward the mortal realm by a boy who dreams of her, Vincent of Becket. Their fates become intertwined as Vincent and Matilda both struggle with the push and pull of both destiny and betrayal. With a perfect title, again, Wild Reverence, perfect title, and the lean into the realms of mythology that we're all obsessed with right now. I already mentioned the Odyssey once. What is going on? This one should have been a 5-star hit for me. And I did love the setting, the characters, and the writing style. But there were definitely pieces of this 500-page book that really dragged for me. I don't know if it was the tiny font that made each page feel like it took forever. You know how sometimes you get into a groove and it's like, it feels like a long time since I turned a page. That impacts my reading in a really big way. And I know that it shouldn't. I don't want a large print book. I don't want to turn it every 6 seconds, but I want to feel the progress that I'm making, and a perceived slowness sometimes leads to an actual slowness. The ways that magic and godly power manifest within these pages also got a little bit convoluted. And some of that is purposeful, of course, because we're building a full mythology. And when you're fighting for mythological power and the stakes don't seem real, it gets a little bit muddled, right? She pulls that off with tricks like being able to steal another god's abilities or powers, but it's a little hard to follow. It does feel like layer upon layer of keeping track of who could do what and why, and are those powers borrowed or stolen, or what's happening here? Is this a human or a god? Is this the one that controls water or the ones who write the stars? What's happening? I did truly enjoy it though, and I loved the depth that it added to the duology that I adore from beginning to end. I'm just not sure we needed it, and we definitely didn't need 500 pages of it. A fabulous 400 would have been perfect. This one ended up being 4 stars for me, but definitely worth the read, especially if you love Rebecca Ross's writing, or specifically the Divine Rivals duology, although she does have another one, I think called River Enchanted, I want to say, that also has a duology to it. So I think maybe that's where I will go next with her, rather than trying to go deeper into the Divine Rivals world. This one is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross.
That's super helpful to know. I know so many people loved Divine Rivals. It's just helpful to know before you jump into this one thinking you're going to get something along the same lines. Because I read Divine Rivals and I didn't feel slowed down or anything.
Exactly. Just know what works for you as a reader. All right, y'all. Those were our 6 current reads, which means it is time for our deep dive, which is, I would say, long requested by the Bookish friends. Everybody is always wondering what's coming out next, what's on our radars. And Meredith and I both really try hard to prioritize backlist and make sure that we're talking about things that have already stood the test of time. Of course, we do read new releases, but we're not always pushing them to the forefront. But that's not what everybody needs in their reading lives, right? Some of us really want to get into the newest, the best, and the greatest, which is why I'm so excited that our deep dive today, based on Kelly's strong recommendation, is Eager Beavers new releases. These are the people who are chomping at the branch, I guess, to get ahead of the publishing curve. There are, I know from Bumi Ishola, our publishing industry insider, about 1,000 new books released every single Tuesday in the US. It is hard to wade through those. It's hard to keep track of the authors you love, what you'd like to pre-order or hold at the library, but fear not. Because Kelly, you're here. Tell us, now that everybody has listened to a little bit, they know a little bit about your book taste, tell us about you and why it's perfect for you to help me curate this list this week.
I mentioned I'm the book pusher in my family, and we have 6 people, meaning I'm always looking for solid 4 and 5-star reads to put on hold on everybody's library accounts. I manage everybody's library accounts. My local librarian even kind of hinted that I'm basically the top library user this last weekend when I was there. I mean, that's how I'm taking it, at least.
You get a pin, a gold star pin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll hand him a gold star pin and ask him to give it to me next time. But the problem is everyone in my family likes different genres. And my husband reads mainly nonfiction and thrillers. My 13-year-old is now mostly romance. Another kid reads horror. Another kid reads only fantasy. Like, they're all over the place. So a while back, I replaced my doom scrolling habit. Every day during lunch, I would scroll social media. It's not a good habit. I replaced it with something I call book scrolling. So I spend my lunch hour every day just scrolling through my favorite book apps, Goodreads and Storygraph, just to see what everyone I follow is reading and what they're loving or not loving, and what are the new releases that they are adding to their TBRs. And I kept coming across new releases that I wanted to remember for my different family members. I wanted to check back on them after they'd gotten some reviews, because I don't want to stick a book in my kid's hand and have them get stuck behind it for several weeks because it's a 2-star read for them. So I started keeping a list of these new releases covering every genre. I have it broken up by genre. I write down which family member might be interested in it. I write down catnip tropes. Well, after a few months of this, my list got really long, and I thought, why am I keeping this list to myself? What if I shared these upcoming titles that I am excited about with other readers who also love that anticipation of shiny new covers on new books? I love the idea of taking a book, something that an author poured their heart and soul into, and putting it in the hands of its perfect reader. But I had no desire to go off in the world and create this. What am I going to start? New releases from Kelly.com? That I'm not interested in that. So I came to Kaytee and I was like, hey, dude, I have a lot of new releases that I've kind of curated. How can I share this with people? And that's how we got here.
Here we are. So that conversation, and B, Kelly creating this spreadsheet, which she knows is my love language, of all this data around books that are upcoming in the next couple months. At this point in this episode, we are looking at stuff releasing within the next month or two from when this episode drops, which means it is the perfect time to pre-order, to put things on your library hold list, or just to put it on your TBR so that it's more available to you to pay attention to as release date gets closer. And if you are one of those readers who super loves knowing what's coming up, just know that in this deep dive, we're about to highlight a few books each, and based on time, we'll decide on if that's 3 or 4 or 5 books each. But there are so many more where this came from. So if you don't hear one that's perfect for you, that's okay. There's going to be a Google Sheet linked in the show notes for this episode that has more than 100 books for you to peruse and decide what to put onto your TBR. All right, Kelly, that means we are ready, because now our friends know that we're going to talk about some, but there's so much more where this came from. Let's get into some of the ones that we wanted to highlight from your amazing new release roundup that you put together for us. What's your first one?
Yes, real quick before we start, I do want to give a special shout out. I talked to 5 different bookish friends and asked them to share their approaches with tracking new releases with me. So I want to thank bookish friends Andrea, Carrie, Carol, Jill, and Suzanne, because thanks to them, I learned that there are already lots of great resources for tracking upcoming releases from your favorite authors, the most popular being one called Fantastic Fiction, where you can follow your favorite fiction authors and then they'll send you an email anytime those authors have a new release. And it's because of them that I learned that the biggest challenge with these new releases, the 1,000 new releases every Tuesday, is figuring out which new to you authors are going to be a good fit, because a lot of folks said they have limited time to read, and so they don't want to get stuck behind a book that's not the right fit for them. I had to share this quote from Jill. She said, "I know my go-to authors for 4 to 5 stars. Everything else is a gamble." So how do you know when you're looking through a list of 1,000 new books every week, which first of all, that's just not even possible, but how do you know if a book is going to be worth that gamble for you?
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about the reader know thyself concept, right? If you have taken the time to get to know yourself as a reader and you know which genres tend to be a hit for you or which catnip tropes can really draw you in, then you're going to be better at going through a huge amount of data and being able to really hone in on what works perfectly for you as a reader. And that's what we're trying to facilitate here. It was just like the best bookish serendipity that right after Kelly and I had started planning this episode and talking about what it might look like, there was a post in the Bookish Friends group that I made sure she saw about how do you guys all keep track of new releases? What are you doing to put the right books on your radar? Which made it really easy for her to go and grab a couple people's names and say, hey, I have questions. Can we hang out on Messenger for a little bit?
Yes, yes. And I do want to give a little disclaimer here. These books that we're talking about, this is anticipatory delight here. Like, we haven't read these books. In some cases, we might have been able to get a sample and read a little bit, but for the most part, I don't know about you, Kaytee, but I wasn't able to quickly get samples or get approved on NetGalley for these. And so that might be more possible in the future, but we're going on vibes and reviews from other people who are not necessarily trusted recommendation sources yet, just randos on the internet. So your mileage may vary, of course.
Well, and talking about what draws us in as readers so that hopefully, again, you know yourself a little bit better and you can figure out, oh, yeah, that's something that really works for me. Or no, I'm definitely not a Kelly reader or a Kaytee reader. I'm more of this type of reader. And that is more interesting. All right, let's get into it, though. Let's do a first book each. What do you got for us?
Okay. First one I've got is The Memory of Borrowed Books by Meg Anderson, and this is a fantasy. So I'm going to read the publisher blurb for you. In the coastal town of Fox Hollow Bay, librarian Claire Ashford keeps her life as meticulously ordered as the centuries-old library she calls home. But when the town announces plans to shut it down, her sanctuary and the life she's built within its walls begins to crumble. One night, while wandering the stacks after hours, Claire discovers a door that shouldn't exist, and behind it lies a secret room filled with books no one else can see. Each book pulls her into the memories of those who have passed through the library's doors, moments half-lived and stories left unfinished. Buried within these pages is a message the library has been trying to share, urging Claire to uncover the path to saving it. With the demolition looming and time running out, Claire must piece together what the library is trying to show her. But one book keeps calling her back, and in its pages is a memory that could change everything. One that reveals the key to saving the library, maybe tangled in her own memories more than she ever could have imagined. So, oh my goodness, I did get to read the first few pages of this, and when the character happens upon the mysterious door in the library where she's worked for years, I was like, okay, I don't need to read anymore. I am in. When this comes out, I am all over it. It's got a mysterious door, magic books, trying to save the town library. There's found family. Yes, please. I saw some folks comp this to How to Read a Book by Monica Wood. And it's blurbed by Kristen Harmel, the author of another book about a librarian that was really, really popular called The Book of Lost Names. So I also wanted to read this little tidbit from the author. She said, I wrote the memory of borrowed books for anyone who has ever carried a story through a hard season. This book grew out of my love for libraries, and writing it reminded me how powerful it can be to feel seen through a story, and how much comfort books can offer when we need it most. I can't wait for you to step inside Fox Hollow Library, wander the stacks, and hopefully find a little piece of yourself waiting there. I mean, Fox Hollow Library, that's like perfection. The storygraph moods for this are emotional, mysterious. It is 34% said it was sad, but 30% said it was hopeful. And there's a good dash of funny in there. I would check the content warnings on this because it does deal with grief and some other tough topics. But this book comes out on October 6th, and I am going to be first in line for it.
Sounds delightful. And we do love bookish books around here at Currently Reading, which works out pretty well for everybody else. So I like it.
Yes, and that was The Memory of Borrowed Books by Meg Anderson.
Excellent.
What do you got, Kaytee?
All right, my first one, Kelly, is the one that you like not so gently pushed me toward with a psst, Kaytee in the spreadsheet. But as soon as I read the blurb for it, I not only went and got it on NetGalley, but I also pre-ordered the hard copy because I want musical, historical fiction mysteries. So I cannot wait to tell y'all about The Violin Maker by M. Terrell, which comes out October 13th of 2026. This is Terrell's debut. It is historical fiction, dual timeline mystery. And even though it's called The Violin Maker, you're definitely going to understand why I needed to pick it up, specifically the former cello player of this currently reading host team with this blurb. In 1950s Manhattan, violin dealer Thomas Barlow receives an unexpected visit from an old friend and fellow World War II veteran Jonathan DeWitt, who is seeking his appraisal for an old Italian cello. The cello is purported to be the work of Andrea Guarneri, a famous luthier from Cremona. The deeper Barlow dives into the cello's past, the more certain he becomes that it is not the work of Andrea Guarneri. This revelation propels him unrelentingly toward the confrontation he has tried for years to avoid with DeWitt, with whom he shares a dangerous secret he thought remained buried in war-torn Europe. In 1963 Italy, Pietro Guarneri emerges from an unspeakable personal tragedy to find himself ensnared in a treacherous political web due to the meddling of his employer, the Duchess Gonzaga of Mantua. With the sole aim of protecting his family and concealing the identity of Elena, the apprentice he smuggles into his workshop to teach, Pietro reluctantly begins constructing the only cello of his instrument-making career. The result will alter the foundations of Pietro's life and reverberate through the centuries, shrouding the truth of the cello's origins in secrecy. A, dual timeline, always a hit for me, right? B, it's The Violin Maker. It's about a cello, which is absolutely far and away my favorite instrument ever to be played on any stage, anywhere, in any orchestra. I love the rich tones of the cello. It is part of why Brendan Slocum and I hit it off so well when he wrote The Violin Conspiracy, and I got to interview him so many years ago about that because he is also a cello player. I just adore everything having to do with cellos and their manufacture and the ways that they build in richness over the years. So that entire blurb grabbed me. I do think I read part of that wrong in that the other timeline is 1693 Italy, and I may have said 1963. Y'all?
Yeah.
That is my mistake, but we're going to leave it because people are people, and that's all right. What else? That older timeline, 1693 Italy with Pietro and the apprentice Elena that he is smuggling into his workshop, that is giving some feminism vibes, which I also super love because we know in 1693 in the 17th century, we were not like lifting women to higher status, right? So this just has a lot of pieces that I really love. The cover is beautiful, so I was all too happy to go and request it and pre-order it. And I love that it's also a mystery. Am I a little worried that the publisher blurb gave us too much information? I am, but we'll see how it actually like comes together within the telling of the tale. This one, again, it comes out October 13th of 2026. It doesn't even have Storygraph ratings yet because it's so new and it's a debut. So I'm going to be one of those people. I'm going to let you all know how it turns out. This is The Violin Maker by M. Terrell.
I literally got so excited when I read the blurb of that one. I was like, how do I gently nudge Kaytee to pick this one to talk about?
Yep, because our long-term friends, they know it takes a gentle nudge because a giant push will not work. All right, let's go with choice number 2. What have you got, Kelly?
All right, next up is Dead Batteries by Kate Maupin. This is sci-fi, and here's the publisher blurb. Ever since May's husband decided parenthood wasn't for him and left, it's just been May and her autistic son with high support needs, Davis, against the world. A rather unwelcoming one that never had much patience or understanding. Then, 99.9% of the population was wiped out by a virus in just a few weeks, and that world ended. May has kept herself and Davis alive only through the self-imposed isolation she got so good at in the before. They have their routines, their cozy nest in an abandoned library, and most importantly, the old battery-powered Game Boy that offers Davis familiarity and comfort in a world that's difficult to understand. One day, Maeve runs into a stranger while out scavenging for the precious batteries that keep Davis's Game Boy alive. This stranger calls himself Bird. He has intel and a proposition. Supposedly, there's an entire haven of survivors nearby. Bird wants in, and he needs May and Davis to play along as wife and child in order to guarantee himself a spot. Besides, wouldn't May want to be part of a community again? Not particularly, but the survivors have batteries. So she reluctantly agrees. And while she knows better than to trust the man who ripped her and Davis out of their routines, she can't help but open up to him. But when Bird's true motivations come to light, her old life collides with the new in terrifyingly dark ways, forcing May to question how far she would go to protect her son. How long can she and Davis last until the batteries run out? Okay, so we're getting post-pandemic dystopia, which isn't even a thing that I realized I like until we lived through a pandemic. We've got a single mom character with a neurodivergent kid. The reviews I read said this is dark but hopeful. There's not a whole lot of reviews on Storygraph, but at first glance, it sounds like people are saying it's emotional, adventurous, intense, but a good dose of hope as well. I was particularly grabbed by what early reviewers said about the representation of what it's really like to parent a child with high support needs. The author writes from that personal experience, and personally, I think I will find solace in seeing that on the page because I have those challenges as a parent, and that will really be impactful for me to see that on the page, to be reminded that I'm not alone in those particular kinds of challenges. So I think it's going to be a really cathartic read for me personally, but it also sounds like a really great story. This one comes out October 27th, and it's 288 pages. It's called Dead Batteries by Kate Maupin.
The pure nostalgia I felt when you said batteries for a Game Boy that eats batteries. Like, my sister and I would drive up to Payson, an hour and a half away, and we had to bring multiple sets of extra batteries for our Game Boys in the 90s. So I love this. Also, my oldest is obsessed with classic technology now. He has a VHS player and a cassette player and a record player all as his like media system that he's building, and it just delights me. So I kind of love the idea of like this kiddo who has his own needs and preferences latching on to this older tech and being like, this is the thing that grounds me, that brings me joy, that needs to continue to function even in this world that has been turned upside down in every other way. So excellent. I love that choice.
What's your next one, Kaytee?
All right, I'm gonna go with middle grade next. This one I'm very excited about. Also feels created in a lab for me, but sometimes that's how you choose your next book, right? I've actually been tagged in a post about this book in the Bookish Friends group. It is An Octopus Named Houdini by Xana Fralin, and it is an illustrated middle grade novel in verse, which is like everything I could ever need. And it's also obviously about an octopus. What else could I possibly want? I am recently on record on the show that I feel like I haven't had any like good verse novels come across my path of late. The last one I read, I want to say, was Otter by Catherine Applegate, probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point. I love a verse novel though. I love, like we already talked about, that feeling of turning pages quickly but getting a full story fed to me, and the way that each word really matters when you're writing in verse. So here's the publisher blurb for An Octopus Named Houdini. They say, all day long we can hear that sea howl prowling wild. Inside our brains, and every part of us is straining to feel it, taste it, twirl it, whirl it, swirl it. Inside our body. Again, even the blurb has verse in it. That makes me so happy. Houdini the octopus lives in an aquarium, but she misses her home in the wild sea. She doesn't like the visitors who bang on her tank, or the way she can't feel the sun on her skin, or the wind rippling the water. It's a dull existence for a creature with 9 brains. Then one day, she meets someone who is different than the others. Juno's busy brain buzzes with so many questions and thoughts. that Houdini's skin tingles with wonder. But the singing of the sea is growing stronger and harder to resist. Can Houdini make Juno understand what she needs before it's too late? This is, of course, giving vibes of Remarkably Bright Creatures. If you read that or watched the Netflix adaptation of it, you're going to want to pick this up. We know that adults can read middle grade here on Currently Reading, and it will enrich your reading life, even if you're not reading it aloud or reading it to a child or reading it with a child. There's beauty in middle grade that we are quick to dismiss once we hit adulthood. And that's part of why this one was so important to feature for me. Right now it has a 4.5 on Goodreads and a 4 on Storygraph. So that also gives me a lot of hope that this is really well done. I do think that other people are on the octopus train now, so I'm glad that people are picking it up and getting excited about it. Like I said, I did get this one from NetGalley. It was read now for me, so I got to grab it right away. But I also know that with an illustrated novel in verse, I'm going to want the hard copy in front of me because that's going to really add to the experience of it. And my Kindle is just not going to have that richness that I know they've put effort into making in the book. So I will be grabbing this. I've already held it at the library because it does come out October 20th, but it's part of my library systems already. And I'm excited to read this one, probably read it aloud to my kids because they love their mama, so they indulge my octopus love as much as they're able to. This is An Octopus Named Houdini by Zana Fralin.
That's awesome.
Hey, Kelly, let's hear about your third one.
Well, okay, so this one is called Bad Words by Rhiannoch Robinson. This is a romance, and here is the blurb. Parker Navarro's debut novel was meant to define his career until critic Selena Chan's blistering review made it the flop of the decade. 4 years later, his new book is his shot at redemption. For Selena, reviewing him again is a professional risk she can't refuse. When her second takedown ignites a viral feud, both their fortunes shift overnight. But as the literary world feeds on their public sparring, a quieter dialogue begins, one that challenges everything they thought they knew about success, sincerity, and each other. Both incisive and tender Bad Words lays bare the costs of creation, the pull between ambition and integrity, the vulnerability of being seen, and the unexpected closeness that can grow in the space between critique and care. Okay, so remember earlier when I said I love focusing on new releases from newer authors and under the radar hidden gems? Well, this is not that, but I don't care because it's the romance I'm most excited for in the next couple of months. A lot of people are calling this a literary romance. And one reviewer I saw called it a love letter to words. Another person said, if you took Pride and Prejudice, made it modern, swapped gender-based personality norms, and added a dash of smutty deliciousness, you would end up with something like Bad Words. Something, because this book cannot be replicated. We've got enemies to lovers, books about books. This is set in the publishing world. It's funny. I saw the author has actually written for The Onion, which is the satirical online newspaper. So I have a hunch when people say it's funny, they're not talking like dad joke level humor, but actually truly subversive stuff that will surprise you and make you laugh. It has been blurbed by Emily Henry, Carly Fortune, Beth O'Leary, lots of romance authors, so it's definitely not flying under the radar, but I don't care. I just had to talk about it because I'm so excited about it. Some people comped it to Book Lovers by Emily Henry, but I'm getting the vibe that there's actually more about the publishing world and the act of creating art that wasn't necessarily covered as much in Book Lovers. Storygraph moods say emotional, funny, and reflective. Romance.io has the spice level as 3 out of 5. And just to give you a little social proof here, your good buddy Kaytee Proctor, Bookish friend, has already read this one and enjoyed it. It comes out October 6th and it is 400 pages. This is Bad Words by Rhiannoch Robinson.
Well, Kelly, I have great news for you that Kaytee pressed this into my hands and I have already finished it because Libro
Oh,
FM
wow.
sent me an ALC of this one. And I was messaging Kaytee regularly throughout, especially the first half of this book, saying, are these people always going to be awful to each other? So there is a lot of like that enemies to lovers stance cannot be overstated. Selena's words are brutal. One of my favorite things about this book, though, is that it's not just publishing industry, it's about the relationship between critique and art and what happens when critiquing or criticizing is policed. And if authors have too much push and pull, which we've seen kind of play out on the internet lately, when an author will post publicly that so and so gave them a bad review, and then that critic might get doxxed, or it might be like an Instagrammer that is all of a sudden facing all this backlash because an author got upset. So it's a really interesting look at the way that social media, the way that publicity in general plays into the written word and the way that books are published. I ended up really liking this book, but at that like 25% mark, I was like, Kaytee, what is going on here? Are these people going to be terrible all the time to each other? And she was like, just stick with it. It's going to be okay. I would agree with that. 3 chili pepper. I might put it at 2.5. It was pretty, it's not closed door, but it's pretty mild open doorness on my personal scale. But yeah, highly recommend this one. I think it's a great pick, and I'm really glad that you brought it to the show to talk about it.
Well, actually, that's really helpful to hear that you had that experience, because books where people are terrible to each other all the way through are just not working for me right now. So that will help me not have buyer's remorse once I get to that point and know to stick with it. So what's your last one that you're excited about?
My third one this week is actually also romance, but it's definitely a pivot from the contemporary literary romance that Kelly was just talking about. I've got What Happens at Nightfall by Lauren Willig. Also comes out on October 6th of 2026, and it is Lauren Willig's debut in this genre. I found a quote from her where she said, after so many years writing historical fiction of various varieties, it was a little read very terrifying to launch myself into a new genre, contemporary and paranormal. So this is a supernatural cemetery-based romance. All right. We are going far afield from like New York City apartments. Here's the publisher blurb for it. In the sprawling Gothic expanse of Brooklyn's Greenwood Cemetery, some secrets refuse to stay buried. Recently laid off and searching for purpose, Jess reluctantly joins her best friend on a supposedly fun nighttime cemetery tour. Yay! Separated from her group by accident, she discovers a bunch of terrified boys and a strange ancient key. Both lead to Greenwood's surprisingly handsome resident arborist, Adam Chervinsky. Recently widowed, Adam has more to protect than the leafy residents of Greenwood. His children, still dealing with the loss of their mother, are acting strangely. A haunting is afoot, and Jess seems to know more than she's letting on. Sparks fly between Jess and Adam, and the unquiet spirits of Greenwood rise from their century-long slumber. As Jess and Adam delve deeper into the cemetery's haunted history, they uncover a Gilded Age curse, a ghostly socialite, and a demonic pact that stretches across generations. What lies hidden in the Greenwood's splendid Vanderbilt mausoleum? As the lines between the living and the dead blur, and the shadows of Greenwood begin to stir with malevolent intent, Jess must confront not only the supernatural forces, but a shocking connection to the past if she and Adam truly want to live happily ever after. This is perfect for spooky or spoopy season reading, as Mary likes to remind us of every year. I love a ghostiness to my romance if I'm in the right season for it, and October 6th, actually prime time for this. It's giving me some Jen DeLuca vibes because she has her Haunted Ever After series, which takes place in Boneyard Key, Florida. But it does seem a little bit darker than that one in that that one has a lot of like rom-com element to it. This is not her debut, but it is trending well on both Goodreads and Storygraph with a 4-star average on each. That fun, spooky romance and demon hunting trope right there in the middle. And I'm excited about this one. I feel like it's going to hit at exactly the right time for the publishing calendar, and it's going to be just the right mood to get me into October reading. So this is What Happens at Nightfall by Lauren Willig.
That sounds really good.
Very cute cover too.
Oh, nice.
All right, y'all, we want to hear what you thought of this roundup. Please be sure to go to the show notes and check out the Google Sheets link if you want to check out everything coming up in the next little bit. Is this something you would love to hear regularly as a bonus series? We want to know that also. So send us emails, Instagram messages, Facebook, post in the Bookish Friends. We want to know what you think because this was really fun. Kelly, I loved getting together with you and getting to like capitalize on the amazing amount of work and research you've done to put this list together for us, and B, get my own TBR excited for some new releases that I wanted to prioritize. Both things scratched a bookish itch that I didn't even know I had. So I appreciate you so much for being here.
Oh, this was so fun. Well, somebody in the Bookish Friends group posted an article, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that made me realize why looking at new releases is so fun. When you do something pleasurable, you get some dopamine, right? It's the pleasure chemical that you've probably heard people call it that, or the feel-good chemical. But when your brain is anticipating something pleasurable, you get the same feel-good chemical released. So being on the hunt for a new book, a new release, is fun just because of that same thing. You're anticipating that great experience. So it's brain chemistry, basically. That's why new releases are fun. So thanks to whoever posted that article that gave me that little tidbit.
I love it. I think we can all lean a little bit more into our happy dopamine brain chemistry. And this one is free. You could just get excited about something without even spending any money on it. Like double win. All right. We do have our Before You Go segment here. We know y'all have stuck with us for a long time today. Thank you, Megan, for all the work you've done. I am going to quickly highlight our Bookish Friend of the Week. This week is Danielle Mansell. She says, okay, I know I'm early, but I need to geek out about my spooky season reading plans. Every spooky season, the YouTube channel Kelsey's Nostalgic Life does a Halloween-a-thon. It's geared toward all things spooky season, and they have tons of printable game boards and other fun stuff to go along with it. This year, they have a game board where you make your way through a haunted mansion by rolling a die and moving along the numbered prompts on the game board. I was feeling a little extra this year, so I turned the board into a haunted mansion escape room challenge. And she goes on to give us a few more details about what she did in order to make an escape room out of this game board. But I love that she is really leaning into her spooky season reading, which she is declaring starts September 1st and goes to November 30th. So she has 3 months to make it through her own haunted house spooky season reading game board. And I just love the way Danielle really leaned into her readerly self and her desire for like fun and adventure in her reading life here.
Yeah, I actually just saw that same post this morning, and as I was reading, I'm like, I love this level of bookish nerdiness. This is just, you're just like leaning fully into it, and it made me so delighted to see that.
Yeah, it's gold star, Danielle. What have you chosen from our menu this week, Kelly?
All right. It was actually difficult to choose from that menu. There's so many fun ways you could go. So I'm going to say that I am currently curious about something, and this is Mary's fault. Okay. Because Mary talked about the service berry, and so I did a buddy read of that with my bookish bestie, who I met in the Bookish Friends group about a year ago. Now we talk about books every single day, by the way. So if you've ever wanted a bookish bestie, just join the Bookish Friends group because you might find your perfect someone.
Although it is like a dating app, sometimes you have to wait for the right person, the right connection to be made, right? It's not always the first one.
Yeah. I mean, I would be happy to be a matchmaker in the Bookish Friends group. That would be so fun. But we did a buddy read of the Surface Berry, and if you haven't read it, the author talks a lot about the gift economy and the strength of your community and that sort of environment. And it's really set me on this path. I've checked out like a stack of books this tall about friendship and community from the library, and I'm like studying like I'm in a college class, like reading about how to foster more community and foster more friendships with neighbors and those weaker ties. Anyway, so it's put me on this path. But I'm circling back, and a bookish friend organized a buddy read of Braiding Sweetgrass, which I am involved in now. And so I'm getting a little bit more of a deep dive, but I'm just going to put it out into the world that if you know of anything that talks about more concrete ways of taking the idea of the gift economy and helping to make that a reality in your own community, I've really leaned hard on the friendship and the relationship aspect. But if anybody knows of any books or resources or anything like that, I am currently curious very much about the gift economy and strengthening your community ties. I would love to hear any recommendations.
So good. And of course, in our outro, you will hear exactly where you can find Kelly and connect with her so that you can send your recommendations directly to her. All right, y'all, that is it for this week. Thanks for sticking with us. As a reminder, here's where you can connect with us. You can find me, I'm Kaytee, at Notes on Bookmarks on Instagram, and Meredith is at Meredith Monday Schwartz on Instagram.
And you can find me, Kelly, at Kelly J. Holmes on Instagram.
Our amazing editor is Megan Pudavong Evans. You can find her on Instagram at Most of Megan's Reads. Full show notes with the title of every book we mentioned in the episode, and that amazing Google Sheet so you can check what's coming up on the new releases, as well as timestamps so you can zoom right to where we talked about them, can be found in our show notes and on our website at currentlyreadingpodcast.com. You can also follow the show at Currently Reading Podcast on Instagram or email us at hello@currentlyreadingpodcast.com. If you head to our website or our Substack, you'll be able to sign up for our Reader Know Thyself newsletter, which helps you, just like this episode, to hone in on exactly what works in your reading life and plan your new releases that you're excited about.
If you are interested in watching this episode, you can also find us on YouTube, where we are constantly adding new features.
You can check out Kelly's bookshelf that she curated especially for this episode. If you really want to help us become a patron, where you will get tons of content, community, and help keep our show commercial free. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify and shout us out on social media. All of those make a huge difference in us finding our perfect audience.
Bookish friends are the best friends. Thank you for helping us continue to grow.
Until next week, may your coffee be hot.
And your book be unputdownable.
Happy reading, Kelly.
Happy reading, Kaytee.